Hello everyone and welcome to Matchbook Flashback. I'm your host Alec Ogg, and the thing is I've got this big jar of matches. It's a collection from all different times and places, and the strangest thing happens when I light each match. It's like the flame starts to swirl hypnotically, and you can see a story unfolding in the flame, held there like a memory in the matchbook. You want to try one out? Let me grab one. Oh, this is a dark emerald green matchbook. It says Willamette Valley, Oregon. Is there a date on here? Oh yeah, 2020. So pretty new. The Willamette Valley is a 150-mile-long valley along the Willamette River, and it's surrounded by mountains. There's the Cascades to the east, the Oregon Coast Range to the west, and the Calapooya Mountains to the south. This valley is where most of Oregon's population lives. It contains like Portland and Salem and Eugene, most of the big cities in Oregon. Oh, interesting. Inside the cover, written above the matches, are the words Will-o, the-wisp. Have you ever heard of that? In folklore, the will, the wisp is a ghost light, or fairy fire, pixie light. It's seen by travelers at night. And in Scottish folklore, it's often seen along the road. Well, I'll stop blabbering. What do you say we light one of these? Alright, when I strike this match, I need you to look deeply into the flame. Look deeply into the flame.
So I guess the start of the story goes back to May 2020. This was the 13-year anniversary of my dad passing away from prostate cancer. Would have been May 9th of May 2020. And I really like to celebrate his life every year. And one of the ways I like to do that is by going out camping. That was one of his favorite hobbies. So I like to do that to celebrate his life. And I live in Oregon. I've been in Oregon since about 2008. And it's kind of been my own personal journey to go across all of Oregon and explore every corner of the state. So this time I was down in the Willamette Valley. But I can't tell you exactly where I was because I don't even know where I was. I decided that for this trip, I was going to turn off all navigation and just follow the roads where they took me. And so all I know is I was in the Willamette Valley. There's lots of trees there. This is it's a rainforest, a cold rainforest. But yeah, lots of trees, lots of lakes, rivers, creeks, swamps, bogs. It's very wet, very rainy, very green. So the year that I went out on this camping trip was a little different because, as we all know, 2020 was the year the pandemic kicked off. So this was May, this was the start of the pandemic, so a lot of the campgrounds were closed across the whole state. Cabins, getaways, all places like that, they were all closed down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I was like, okay, well, I won't be able to camp in the campground, but I can car camp. I've got my tent with me. I can just pull up off the side of the road somewhere and pop up a tent. So I wasn't really deterred by this. And, I was going to self-isolate, so I wasn't going to be around anybody. So I didn't worry about getting COVID. So I wanted to go someplace I'd never been. And about 11 p.m. that night, I was tired enough to pull off and go to sleep. So I found this off-road, didn't really have any signage for it or anything like that. All I know is it took me down the road. At the very end, there was a picnic table and a little shelter. And then on the right-hand side of the road, through some trees, there were some cabins. But these cabins were totally dark, no lights on. I didn't see anybody out and about with flashlights. I didn't see anybody at all. This was 11 at night, pretty late at night. So I pulled in, went all the way down to the end of the road, decided I didn't want to camp down there. So I pulled up farther up the road into this little kind of paved area, and I just pulled out there. And I basically got comfortable for the night. Pulled out a book, took my contacts out, put my glasses on. I really don't know how long I'd been reading for, though. It could have been, 15, 20 minutes. It could have been an hour. I wasn't really keeping track of the time. But after a while, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. So I glance up from my book, and I'm very immediately startled by what I see. It's not something I expect to see. Basically, what it looks like is these little tiny pinpricks of blue-white light. And to me, it looks just like fireflies. But I'm really confused because in Oregon, we do have fireflies. It's just that the fireflies don't fluoresce as adults. And even if they did fluoresce, I've never personally seen that color of firefly, although I am aware that there's a species that exists that is that color. But I'm really confused because obviously Oregon does not have these kinds of fireflies here. These types of the blue-white fireflies and just fluorescent fireflies in general have never, ever been described in Oregon. So I turn my overhead light off and I'm looking out through the trees, and I can see that these little lights are moving over by the cabins. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm trying to think, maybe this is like somebody's flashlights or something like that. Maybe I was wrong about the cabins being empty. Maybe this is just a group of campers who, for some reason, are disobeying the shelter in place and stay at home and self-isolate, and they're just out camping together. But I've never seen flashlights that look quite like that. To me, it really did look just like fireflies. It did not remind me of any kind of flashlight I've seen. And again, like I said, this is the pandemic. People really aren't going to be out in big groups right now. So I really wasn't understanding why I was seeing so many lights. There were a good dozen or more lights in the trees. So I didn't understand why there would be so many people. I thought, okay, well, maybe it's cars. But again, why would there be such a big group of cars? Why are their headlights so weird looking? It could be that it's possible that they're bouncing off of something and I'm seeing the reflection. But again, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And I've seen fireflies before. My dad's family's from the East Coast. I went out to visit them when I was a kid. I know what fireflies look like. And these just looked very much like fireflies, too much like fireflies to really make me think of either flashlights or car headlights or something like that, or even glow sticks. I don't think they were glow sticks either. So yeah, I don't really know what they were. Is it possible that I saw the world's first Pacific Northwest firefly? I don't know. I really don't know. But I did look it up later. And some people, at least from the articles that I've read, have described these lights as will-o'-the-wisps or fairy lights. I don't know what I saw. All I know is that it was pretty weird.
How did it end, basically? Did they leave?
I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. And so I got pretty anxious. And I turned off my overhead light and took my glasses off so I couldn't see anything anymore, and I went to bed.
So did you feel like a sense of fear around them?
It was just confusing to me. It was like a sense of unease. It's like, I don't know what I'm looking at.
At that time, when you were in that confused state, did you think like, oh, those must be fireflies? Or were you thinking like, this is something unusual that doesn't seem right?
Oh, it definitely had more of the feeling of this is unusual. There's something that's not quite right going on here.
Were these lights, were they flashing on and off like lightning bugs or fireflies tend to do?
Oh, yeah.
And were they moving around, or did it look like they were stationary?
Oh, no, they were totally moving around. They would turn on, move a little bit, turn off, flash on, and they'd be in different locations.
It was like bluish, you said?
Yeah, it was a bluish white light.
And did they illuminate any of the woods or cabin around them?
No, they were really, really dim. They were so dim that I could not see them reflect off of anything. I could just see the little pinpricks of light.
And so you think they were about the size of a firefly, if you had to guess?
I'd say they would be about the size of a firefly. There is a firefly that are called ghost fireflies. They're called rare blue ghost fireflies. And they look to be almost exactly like what I described with the coloration and size, but they've never been documented in Oregon.
You mentioned that you were doing this trip in memory of your dad. Do you think the lights were connected to that in any way?
Yeah, no, this was during his, the 13-year anniversary of him passing away. And I don't know, I thought, well, maybe this is something unexplainable, and maybe this could be my dad saying, hey. So I did think about that, but more at a later date, because I think I was a little too freaked out when I saw it happen in the moment. But having spoken to my brother again for the first time in like 12 years, he had described that he's gone out and done something similar. He has gone out to the woods on our dad's anniversary, and he's asked for a sign from our dad. And he said that he'll see stuff in the sky, or he'll see lights in the trees or something like that. So, maybe it is my dad. I don't really know.
Are there any other unusual things that have happened in your life that come to mind?
You're talking to the park ranger.
Oh, you're a park ranger?
Yes, I have many, many stories.
Oh, wow. Do you have any that you're willing to share?
Yeah. Oh gosh, let me tell you my brother's UFO story.
Okay.
Yeah. So this happened back in 2008. This was just after my family had moved from Southern California up to Western Oregon. And it was a pretty rural part of Western Oregon that we moved to. It's a little town called Sandy. Most people probably haven't heard of it. But it's got a population of only, a few thousand people. So not a very big town. And I think I was about 12, which means my brother would have been 10. And my mom had decided to take, here we go, the unlit country back road home. So already getting spooky. And this was after visiting my step-grandparents that evening. It was pretty late on a Sunday. I'd say probably around 10:30. A lot of people in the car. It was my mother, her wife, my brother, and I. And we were all rather stressed because going to my step-grandparents' house was never really a fun thing. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and my grandpa was kind of an asshole. So my stepmom really liked to pick fights over his assholery, and just being around somebody with Alzheimer's can be really draining and really hard to deal with. So yeah, we were all pretty stressed, pretty tired, and we wanted to go home. So as soon as we got in the car, after going to my step-grandparents' house, my parents broke into a big fight, like they always did. I was in the back seat of the convertible with my 10-year-old brother. And mainly, I was trying to tune out my parents arguing. They were just yelling and screaming, and I was just like, I'm so tired of this. I just want to go home and go to bed. And my brother was kind of the same way. He was just kind of curled up in the corner, not really interacting much. So all of a sudden, he nudges me, though, and he's pointing out the back window, and he's insisting that I turn around and look out the back window. Which is a little disconcerting to me. And like I said, I was pretty tired and irritated. So I just shrug him off. I'm just like, just leave me alone, dude. I don't want to deal with this. Like, parents are screaming. Can we just not cause any more chaos? But he pokes me again, and he's becoming really insistent, and the tone of his voice is changing, and he's sounding really scared, and he's just like, look out the back window, look out the back window. You have to look out the back window. So I just snap at him, and I'm just like, leave me alone. I literally pull up the hood of my hoodie and yank the strings closed so that he knows that I'm ignoring him and I don't want to talk to him. And he's really trying to frantically get our parents' attention now, but they just don't care. They're too absorbed in their argument. This goes on for a while, and he eventually calms down, although every once in a while I can still hear him turn around in the full leather seats to look out the back window. The next day, when I was a lot less tired and a lot less stressed, I asked him what had him so worked up in the car. And he just turns to look at me. His face goes really pale. And he describes to me in a super shaky voice that something had been following behind the car the night before. And what he says he saw is pretty typical of what a lot of people see with UFO sightings. He said that he saw a really big black triangle shape following us. He said that there were 3 points of dim blue-white light at each tip of the triangle, and that he could see a dark reflective dome in the middle of it. And, this kid's 10. I don't think he's been reading any alien stories at this age, unless there were books that he was reading that I wasn't aware of. When he was 10, all he ever read were Star Wars books. So I don't think he was reading any UFO books. But yeah, he just told me this with such conviction and fear in his voice that I know he must have seen something. We drove that road a lot after that, and we never saw anything like that again. And, my brother got kicked out when he was about 14, so I hadn't seen him for 10 or 12 years until just this past year. And so I got him to retell this story to me. And the extra detail that I had forgotten after all these years that he added to me afterwards is he said that it was really weird. It was like our parents were in a trance. They just completely ignored me and refused to look out the back window.
Weird.
And that's a pretty common report from UFO experiencers, that adults are often in a trance-like state. Yeah, so really bizarre, but that was kind of the first thing he asked me. He was like, do you remember that UFO I saw when we were kids? He was so adamant about it even after all these years.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I had a U.S. Marine on who saw that same craft, and he is an artist too, and he actually drew it. I'll send you the episode, because on YouTube I basically just put his drawings and animations on top of the video. So when he gets to it, it kind of just shows what he saw. Maybe you can send it to your brother and see if that corroborates it. But
wow, that'd be neat.
It was that exact same triangle with the glowing orbs on the corners and stuff. But yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird story. It makes me, sad I missed out on seeing that.
Yeah. And being a park ranger, have you ever gotten weird reports from anybody?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, we've gotten weird reports of just bizarre drownings that have taken place that don't really have an explanation to them. It's just person steps out into the water and they never pop back up. Folks going missing in really bizarre ways and never being found. So, yeah, we get lots of those reports. Oregon, I work right on the border between Oregon and Washington, which are some states that have a lot of high strangeness in them.
Yeah. Do any specific reports come to mind?
Oh, well, we did have a drowning this year, and that was kind of what they described the drowning as, is that he was on a shelf, he stepped off into the deeper water, and just disappeared. Like, didn't resurface, no struggle, nothing, just disappeared.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's paranormal or not. There's the Columbia River is a really strong river. It's a big river.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hidden undercurrents. I don't think the guy was wearing a life jacket, so that also could have contributed to it. And it's possible that his waders got filled up and he sank. So, I don't know if that's paranormal, but yeah, I know when I was talking to my coworker, he told me a weird story about where he had the window of the vehicle rolled down about halfway, maybe a little bit more than that. And there was no wind, which was kind of unusual because the Columbia River Gorge is really windy, like all the time. So pretty unusual not to be really windy. And he had his hat on the dashboard. And he said that with no wind, with the window rolled only halfway down, it was like something invisible reached in the car and snagged the hat off the dashboard. And it went flying out like 20 feet outside the car.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and he said that had never happened to him before, never happened to him since, and he has no idea what it could have been, except that he did say he was by a sacred Native American, it's not a statue, it's like a rock formation that's out here. He said that he was out by that rock formation patrolling, and that's when it happened.
Man, that's strange.
Very strange. I love to collect stories like this. Most of my stories are about saving people's lives. I don't have too many paranormal stories quite yet. But hopefully, the longer I stay in this profession, the more stories I'll get to collect.
Well, as you can see, the match has gone out. And as the smoke clears, I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that Will the Wisp encounter. If you really enjoyed it, a great way to support this show is to text a link of this episode to a friend so they can enjoy it too. Another great way to support the show is to give us a 5-star rating. It only takes one click, and it really helps the show grow. But thank you all for stopping by, and I hope you come back next week, because I have another match to light.